Amen. Yeah, you may be seated. Good morning, everybody. So good to see all of y'all here this morning on this holiday week. Rocky is on vacation at the beach. If you've checked Facebook, if you didn't know, he's at the beach taking picture of his legs. Don't ask me why we do that, but every time you go to the beach, you got to do that. This morning at 1 a.m., you're going to be just thrilled to hear this. This morning at 1 a.m., I changed the sermon. And I told the ABL team, and they were so gracious, believe me. But I felt God just speaking to me in a certain way. And so yeah, I've been up since 1 o'clock in the morning, basically redoing this message until I got here this morning. The thing that really got me is that we've been talking about faith, right? Like faith of Abel and Enoch, if you've been here for all of these, Noah, Abraham. And when we see these people in the Bible, all of them just mighty heroes of the faith. But what we see is they start with this great faith decision. I mean, like, Abel gave the right sacrifice. Enoch walked with God. I mean, we don't see their journey of faith. I mean, I wish I would have had this great decision of faith and never turned back, had great faith all my life. But the problem is I didn't. I think most of us have not. And it's really a journey of faith, isn't it? Where God is working on our faith to increase our faith because we know without faith it is impossible to please God. Well, what I like about Gideon is it really gives us the story of his faith. We see the journey of his faith as we go through this. And 1 o'clock in the morning, God had been speaking to me about this part, about the journey of faith that God has taken me through as well. Because as I was studying Gideon, oh man, I saw so much of what God has done in my life that paralleled this exact story. One of the things that kind of nailed it for me that I was going to do this was a song that I love. How many of y'all have heard of The Goodness of God by C.C. Winans? If you have not heard that song, man, get it downloaded. It is awesome, and it blesses me. But in there it talks about, it says these words, "And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. And with every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God." I guess if I was going to title this message, it would be Steve Singing of the Goodness of God. Only I'm not going to sing. We're just going to talk about it. You'll hear stories about my life, but it's really not about me. It's about God's goodness. His goodness running after me. And thank God it did. Thank you, Lord. Malcolm Muggeridge said this: "Every happening, great and small, is a parable whereby God speaks to us. And the art of life is to get the message." It took me too long to get the message, but I want to share with you, maybe it will help you in your journey of faith to believe him and to believe what he says. The story starts here with Gideon, Judges chapter 6. You can turn your Bibles to that. Judges chapter 6, we're going to start right at the very beginning, verse 1. Up until this time, Israelites had just fought a great battle, and they were living in relatively peace and prosperity. But we pick up in verse 1 what happened. It says, "The Israelites did evil in the Lord's sight. So the Lord handed them over to the Midianites for 7 years. The Midianites were so cruel that the Israelites made hiding places for themselves in the mountains, the caves, and the strongholds. Whenever the Israelites planted their crops, marauders from Midian, Amalek, and the people of the east would attack Israel, camping in the land and destroying crops as far away as Gaza. They left the Israelites with nothing to eat, taking all the sheep, goats, cattle, and donkeys. These enemy hordes, coming with their livestock in tents, were as thick as locusts. They arrived on droves of camel too numerous to count. And they stayed until the land was stripped bare. So Israel was reduced to starvation by the Midianites, and then the Israelites cried out to the Lord for help." Now, referencing the Midianites is not going to have a great impact on us. But referencing what they did, I think will. It says they stripped everything bare. There's trials that some of you have been through where everything has been stripped bare. I've had several people come to me this morning at the last service. It's just hard to conceive what people are going through, some of the trials that are being experienced. I think every face here, every person here understands the Midianites, the enemy, and what they can do. And that's what Gideon was going through. The Midianites in my life were somewhat different, as they're different in your life. In fact, that peace and prosperity thing, that's where I was, man. As a teenager, I was going to do something that never had happened in my family before. I was going to get a college degree, 4-year degree. Mom and Dad didn't get one, neither did any of my grandparents. And I was motivated. When I say motivated, I'm not just kidding. I was motivated, man. I was one of those kids you hated in high school who always did their homework, who always said, have a good day to the teachers. You know, you just hated those guys. That was me. You would have hated me. I loved school. You would have hated me even more for saying that. But I studied hard. I wasn't a brainiac, but I studied hard because I had a dream, and that was to get a 4-year degree. I did well. I was vice president of the National Honor Society. And in fact, this is before email and internet and all that good stuff. In order to apply for colleges to get information, you literally had to do something. It's kind of strange now. It's called write a letter. And so I was writing these universities. I wrote them all. Dude, I wrote Harvard, Yale, and Princeton. I thought, why not? Maybe they'll say yes. Yeah? But I was motivated. I must have written like 30 or 40 different universities getting information because I was going to do well. I was going to do well in school. But then even something more glorious than making good grades happened. You know what happened to me? I got saved. Whew, I was at 15 and a half. I got saved. It was the greatest day of my life. The Lord changed me. And man, I was just on cloud 9. I loved the Lord so much. And anyway, things started happening and couldn't go to church because both my parents were alcoholics, and they were getting up on Sunday morning. And so I had to wait till I was age 16. At age 16, again, highly motivated, it was like age 16, day 1, I had my driver's license. And so I get my little sister, I said, let's go to church. I finally get to go to church. So we open up the newspaper. Back then, these newspapers are things they used to deliver to your home every day. And you open up the paper, and they would have on the paper a list of all the churches. It was all on one page. I guess it was the church page. And so they had all the churches there. So I get you have to understand, I know nothing. So I got my little sister there. I go, let's look. Let's pick a church. Dude, I could have picked a temple or something. I don't know. I had no knowledge. So we're looking at them, and I said, look, there's a church just starting. We're just starting. Let's go to that one. Made sense. And so I go. It was a good Baptist church. And so we go. It's at the Holiday Inn. It's their first meeting. Holiday Inn conference room. And so I go over to the Holiday Inn conference room. Now, look, I can tell by the way the chairs were set up, they weren't expecting anybody. You know, this is just them, and we'll stick that free advertisement in the paper, right? And so I walk in, and it was like dismay, awe. Like, who are these people? A 16-year-old comes in with a 14-year-old and is like, is this the church? And they're like, yeah, where are your parents? And they're in bed at home, sleeping it off, you know what I mean? And so anyway, they come. Here's the thing, that family loved me. That church family, they wrapped their arms around us, and they mentored us and loved us and taught us. They were a little slice of heaven on this earth. I loved them. They loved me. It was beautiful. I made it. They didn't even there were no students. I was the student ministry. But I loved it. All these people were way older than me, loved it. So in any case, going to church, then my mom and dad get saved. Both of them were alcoholics through this church, the ministry of this church. My mom and dad get saved. They both quit drinking, quit smoking. On the day they got saved, to this day, have never drank another drop of alcohol, smoked another cigarette. Yeah, go ahead and clap on that one. So literally, I'm on cloud nine, and then I'm at the service one night. I feel like God's calling me to preach. God is calling me. I go down to the aisle, talk to the pastor. I pray, and he confirms it in my life, and he says, go to Liberty University. Man, I cannot, I'm at the pinnacle, at the tippy top tip of the mountain. I'm going to serve the Lord full time. My mom and dad, they got saved, and my dad thinks, well, I kind of feel like the Lord's also calling me. So he goes to college with me. Yeah, that's a little weird. Let me tell you what that meant. That meant I wasn't going to be living on the dorms. I was going to be living at home. I was going to have to work a job and give my paycheck to my parents because they both left good jobs. And it was all for one and one for all. And we all had to pool our money to make it. And it was a struggle. I missed being on the dorms, college life. I knew I could never go home again. All my friends. I'd never seen. Home was now in Virginia, Lynchburg. But I was making it through that, I think slowly going through it. But then one day my pastor came to visit. My pastor from Texas, that's where I was, Texas, came to visit my mom and dad. Had a good time. They asked me to leave. I thought that was weird. Later, my mom and dad told me that church had closed its doors. There had been some sort of argument, some sort of fight. And it was hard because here I am, 18 years old, and I had my little slice of heaven. It just blew up. How could these people fight? We all love each other. They all love me. It's all a happy family. But it wasn't, and I didn't know it. Of course, I was just thinking about me. I didn't think about my parents. They were hurt. They ended up moving back in the middle of the semester back to Texas. I was living in somebody's house. I was sleeping on the floor, finishing out the semester. Man, I was like toast. I was done. It's like I was thinking, what is going on here? My dad bought me a Greyhound bus ticket so I could get back to Texas. And if anyone rode on a Greyhound bus for any length of time? Wow, okay, this is older military that are here. That's not fun. 36 hours, and all I had to do was think. By the time I hit Austin, Texas, honestly, I still remember walking out the doors of that bus stop, and I thought, is any of this real? I remember my chemistry teacher, I was sharing Jesus with her back when I was in high school, and so excited, and she says, oh, it's just a phase you're going through. And I thought, was it just a phase that I was going through? Let me tell you, the Mennonites came and they attacked. I ended up going to work at Burger King. That's where I was working in Lynchburg, Virginia. So I applied at Burger King in Victoria, Texas. Hey, I got experience. Amazingly, they hired me. And I was going to junior college, local junior college. And I thought, man, my dreams are done. I didn't know what to do. I was like a ship without a rudder, just kind of going along. And I felt a number of things, but one of the things that hurt most of all was the fact that all the dreams, everything that I worked for, looked like it was completely gone. That's how Gideon felt. I mean, Gideon, we're about to see him, is threshing wheat in a wine press so he cannot be seen by the Midianites. And he's about to have this amazing dialogue with God, a dialogue that I had so many times I can't even begin to count them. Just going through this struggle, this what I call this dark night of the soul that I was going through because everything was just obliterated before my eyes. I couldn't understand it. We pick up this conversation. It's so interesting. In chapter 6, verse 11, it says, the angel of the Lord. Now, by the way, the angel of the Lord, this is a Christophany, a pre-incarnate appearance of Christ. That means Jesus appeared before he was born. That's not amazing because he's always existed, right? And so oftentimes in the Old Testament, he would appear. He appeared here to Gideon. And it says he came and sat beneath the great tree at Ophrah, which belonged to Joash of the clan of Abiezer. Gideon, son of Joash, was threshing wheat at the bottom of a winepress to hide the grain from the Midianites. And then the angel of the Lord appeared to him and said, mighty hero, the Lord is with you. Now, I got to laugh when I read that. Because here's Gideon. Where is he? He's in a winepress. In fact, if you were walking by this winepress, do you know what you would see? You wouldn't see Gideon. What you would see is some wheat coming up, going down. Coming up, going down. And he was threshing. In other words, he'd throw it up and the chaff would get blown away. The good stuff would come back down. But he was hiding. Why was he hiding? Really? Because he was afraid, and you know that's the answer. He was afraid. and the Lord comes up and appears to him, and what does he call him? Mighty hero. He does not look like a mighty hero. Well, Gideon, what he says, mighty hero, the Lord is with you. Now, what gets Gideon is that last part, the Lord is with you. That's what sticks in his craw. So, sir, Gideon replied, if the Lord is with us, I can see him saying this in a very sarcastic tone, right? If the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? And where are all the miracles our ancestors told us about? Didn't they say the Lord brought us up out of Egypt? But now the Lord has abandoned us and handed us over to the Midianites. And the Lord didn't even reply to that. He says to being abandoned or whatever. The Lord returned to him and said, go with the strength you have and rescue Israel from the Midianites. I am sending you. God sticks with what's important, right? You know, remember when Job went through all the trials, if you've read the book of Job, and then Job at one point says that, though he slay me, I will hope in him. Nevertheless, Job 13:15, nevertheless, I will argue my ways before him. It's like, God. And that's how we get sometimes. And that's how Gideon was being right there. And when God appears to Job at the end of that, when you read it, God didn't say one time, now, Job, sit down, understand. This is why I did this. I was talking to Satan, and he didn't do any of that. You know what God says? Hey, this is who I am. And where were you when I did this and this and this and this? You know what Job said? I'm putting my hand over my mouth. I spoke too soon. Well, that right there is what he is dealing with. Gideon said, and the Lord turned to him and said, go and, with the strength you have, rescue Israel. And then Gideon replied, but Lord, how can I rescue Israel? My clan is the weakest in the whole tribe of Manasseh, and I am the least in my entire family. So I want to break this down a little bit because it applies, I think, to all of us, but it certainly applies to what was going on in my life, and that is the presence of the Lord. One of the things when I got back from Virginia, and I was in Texas, and I was going to junior college, and I was working at Burger King. I mean, that is like the exact opposite of my dream, working at Burger King, okay? Just so you get that. I'm living the exact opposite of where I thought God was calling me to be. But while we're doing that, I'm like, God, where are you? I don't understand this. God, look, God, I wanted to serve you. God, I wanted to be in ministry. I wanted to help people. I wanted to do what you called me to do. I wanted to serve you, God. Where are you? And there's this feeling of abandonment when we're in the darkest of the nights and we're looking for God and we're saying, where are you, God? And that's what Gideon was saying. He said, man, look what we're going through. But the fact is, God is in your trials and in your tribulations just as he is on the mountaintops. You know, it's C.S. Lewis who said, God whispers to us on the mountaintops, right? He speaks to our conscience. Oh, but he shouts to us during our hard times. And God was shouting to Gideon, getting his attention. Sometimes God uses those hard times in your life to get your attention. Man, everything's going on. Do you need God? No, everything's cool. I mean, I'll go to church on Sunday, but man, Monday through Saturday, that's me, dude, right? And then a trial comes. And man, all of a sudden he gets our attention. I'll never forget 9/11 when it happened. Man, church was normal. 9/11 happens. It is packed. Why? People all of a sudden said, wait a minute. I don't have the resources for this. I need God. And they started showing up. He was asking, where are you, Lord? And that was what was hurting me the most, is that I couldn't see God in the darkness, and I wanted to see him so badly. And I just didn't believe he was there all the time. But he was. In fact, this was so powerful in my life that I still feel it sometimes. But have any of y'all seen the musical Shrek? How many of y'all seen, not the movie, the musical? The most uncultured congregation I have ever seen in my life. Oh, Well, there's this part. If you've seen the movie, probably you've all seen the movie, Fiona is in this tower, right, guarded by this fire-breathing dragon, right? And she can't get out till Shrek gets her, but she's always looking for her white knight to come. And so there's a song in the musical that Fiona sings as a child. They have her as a child, then as a teenager, then as adult. And it goes like this. It goes, because I was looking for God, I was looking for him. Lord, appear, give me a miracle. So it says, so I know, she's singing, so I know he'll appear, her white knight in shining armor, because there are rules and there are strictures. I believe the storybooks I read by candlelight. My white knight and his steed will look just like these pictures. It won't be long, I guarantee. And then the young one says, day number 23. They're counting the days. Okay, then she goes away and the teenager comes out, sings this exact same thing. And she says, day number 958. Then the adult comes out, the adult Fiona. She sings the exact same thing. And she says, day number, and I'm ready for the number. But they changed the song. And at that point, instead of saying the number, she says, day number, are you there, God? It's me, Fiona. It still gets me. In fact, when she said that part, I didn't expect it, and it was like, boo! It just tears came up when she sang, are you there, God? And I mean, there's people all around me, you know? So I'm like to Karen, like, is the car over there? Or is it over there? But I long for the presence of God, and I know that feeling when you're longing for it and you can't see him, but he's there. He said Jesus told us he'll never leave us or forsake us. God was there, but I was too hurt, too blind, too selfish to see him. I would tell God he's abandoned me and handed me over to the world. I compare my life to the dream, and I came up missing, but God he's always sending me these little sticky notes. You ever have anybody that they give you notes, like they leave notes for you, a little sticky note on the mirror, a little sticky note here? He was leaving me these little sticky notes, like when I got married and my wife, and what a blessing that was. She was a rock when I was on the roller coaster, dude. Man, I was on the roller coaster of faith. I mean, it wasn't that I didn't have any good times. I wasn't like always depressed, okay? It was like a roller coaster, good, bad, good, bad. And work would get stressed and go down. Like, what am I doing here, you know? And then family would be good. It's up and down. And God would send me these little sticky notes. Maybe the birth of my children were like, wow, positive. God, you're a creator, miracle, wonderful. And I'd love them and I'd serve them. And then life would get stressed and it just a back and forth. Some of the most powerful sticky notes, and what I'm telling you, I can't explain, but it's true. I was at Burger King, Kingsville, Texas, and old lady, I don't know if she's homeless, I don't know if she's just poor, came just barely able to walk, coming up the sidewalk. I see her, and so I go up to her, I said, hey, can I get you something to eat? Because she definitely looked like she hadn't had something to eat for a while, so can I get you something to eat? She goes, yes, thank you. So I'm walking her to the door of the Burger King. She turns to me and says, you're going to be an evangelist. I want to check. Has anyone ever had that happen to you? Someone says, you're going to be an evangelist? That's what I thought. I thought that's strange. You know? And so I got her food, and I went out to my car, and I started to go away, and then you know what happened to me? I thought, was that an angel? Of course, I go back, and she's not there, so I mean, it's been too long. I don't know. Another time I was at an associational meeting. By that, I mean the associational meeting, if some of y'all don't, because I'm sure none of y'all have been to one, is where all the churches in the association get together, and they have a big hoopla, preaching, singing, worship, yada, yada, on and on and on. It's a wonderful time. My pastor wanted me to go with him. So I said, sure. So I'm going to go. He calls me up, says, I can't go. Could you go and just, let me know what's said and stuff like that? So I said, sure. So I go. I'm by myself. I pick a back row just so I wouldn't have to talk to anyone. And then the enemy got all over me. It was one of the most difficult nights, really. I mean, it may not seem like that, but But up there, I saw like 30 or 40 men living my dream, you know? And it was just killing me. But God had another little sticky note, which was just the weirdest thing. I leave that conference, and again, down, and a Hispanic guy was there. I walked by him, and he puts his hand on my chest, which is weird already, okay? But it stops me. And he says, "You're going to be a pastor." Kid you not, that's what happened. And you know what I did? "You're weird." And I walked away. I didn't say that, okay? And then again, I don't know why these things don't occur to us till I got to my car. I was like, God, was that you? And sometimes I believe it. Hey, you say, man, that could have been just some weirdo. Okay. God used a donkey. He can use weirdos. But boy, I needed that. And so God was doing that, letting me know that he was there. The other problem that I had was not just feeling God's presence, but just the diminishment of my own value. I mean, did you hear what Gideon said? What Gideon said, you know, the Lord says, mighty hero. And Gideon says, whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm in the tribe of Manasseh, right? Manasseh's like the weakest tribe out of all of them. Oh, and guess what, angel of the Lord? My clan is the weakest in the weakest tribe. And do you know who you're talking to? Gideon, the weakest person in the weakest clan of the weakest tribe. No, I'm not a hero. Those same things occurred to me. I mean, I was a Burger King manager. Can you get any worse than that? That's what I was thinking. There's nothing lower than being a Burger King manager. You want me to prove it? How many of you want your children to grow up to be Burger King managers? Exactly. And there I was, and when I get really crass, I would think, what is my mission in life? My mission in life is to make people fat. That's what I'm doing. God, that's what you called me to do? Really? Is this what you want? And I took my value and I just lowered it. And I thought, I was embarrassed. I was just embarrassed to be around people. I was embarrassed. I didn't have a college degree working at Burger King. I wanted to go to seminary, but I had one kid. That'd make it difficult. Had two kids. Had three. Had four. You would think I would get it. 4 kids, and I thought there is no escape. My value was diminished, the presence of the Lord. But God, you know what? Here's the thing. He sees how you can be. He knows who you really are, how you can be if you walk in faith with him. What did he call Gideon? Mighty hero. Gideon didn't think that of himself. Who thought it? God. God didn't just think it. He knew it. He knew that if Gideon walked by faith, that's exactly who he would be. And what does God say to us? Does he say that you're no better than a Burger King manager? No, he doesn't. Listen to what he says about you, that you're a child of his. You're a child of the King of Kings, a child of royalty, man. You're in the family. He says that you're a friend of Jesus, that you're a saint. Look, you are a temple of the Holy Spirit. That means the Spirit of God dwells in you. I think that makes you pretty valuable. He says that you're a citizen of heaven, that you're a new creation. Get this. You are more than a conqueror through Jesus Christ who loved you and gave himself for you. You are more than a conqueror. God says, I am sending you. Now, God would get my attention, and believe me, I was serving the Lord. I was teaching. I was Sunday school director. My church even licensed me to preach at the church in Texas. But when I was focused on Christ, I was fine. But what happens was, when I focused on my dream, maybe better to state, when I focused on me, I was depressed. My faith would weaken. I would beg God for a word, some hope. I wrote a poem. Don't laugh. When you're really depressed, if your husband ever says he wrote a poem, he is depressed. All right. Give you context for this. I got a call from the Burger King in Kingsville, Texas. The HVAC, the units were not heating. It was winter, it's cold. Obviously, customers are complaining. And I tried to solve it over the phone. I was having a great time with my family, trying to solve it over the phone, and then I have to go. And I've got to go because the owner said he was going to buy a company car for me, but right now I just drive this maintenance van, which was literally a piece of junk. I mean, there was a hole in the floorboard. When I'm driving down the road, I can see the road. It's right below me. I can see the stripes. I can see everything. And I'm driving down in this van to Kingsville, leaving family. Like I said, it's cold and dark, and I hit bottom, and I wrote this poem. Now, this poem, when I wrote it, this was 40 years ago, right? 35, I don't know. My wife took it from me and hid it. It's that difficult. Literally, this week is the first time I've seen it in 30-something years. But I asked her if she had it, and she did. She pulled it out. My kids haven't heard this. But anyway, there's a mixture of faith, but a lot of despair here. But it gives you an idea of where I was. It goes like this: dreams, and that's the real problem there, dreams. Dreams rise in my soul, casting long shadows in my mind. Phantoms of things that might have been. Reality chases these spirits away, but they continually return to haunt me. I can experience them with none of my physical senses, yet deep in my heart, I feel the sting of the unfulfilled desires. They tear at my heart, reopening old wounds that have never healed. I cry out to God through my tears, and I hear, "Be content." But shall I be content while people starve for the truth and I can't feed them? I cannot be content. My eyes grow dim and my senses are dull. Someday will I just not care. Oh Lord, I can see where the sun will set in the horizon. Will it set on a heartbroken old man that dreams of what might have been? The day is far spent, and only you know, Lord. I've heard that dreams are channels through which we live life to the fullest. They can also be a maze, which though we run incessantly, will never let us escape. Oh God, I've run so long. It was a difficult time. You can see why she hid that poem. I knew God was my only hope, and there were some things that I tried to do. You know, you ever tried to manipulate God? I was like, God, I need to hear a word from you. God, I need to hear a word from you. And we see Gideon. He's got the same thing. He's basically asking God for a sign. In verse 16 and 17, he says, God, if you're going to help me, show me a sign. In verse 37, he says, prove it to me. You remember throwing out the fleece? You remember that? Surely you've heard that saying, throwing out the fleece. And Gideon did that. He says, man, make the fleece wet and all the ground dry. God did it because God's a gracious God to do that for him. But that didn't satisfy him. He said, wait a minute. Let's do it opposite. Make the fleece dry and all the ground wet. And then God did that. But we're always trying to manipulate God, always trying to get a sign from him. And man, I did it. I'm sorry. God, forgive me. But any of y'all ever flipped a coin? Say, God, heads means this and tails means that. I think a few of y'all have. But I felt guilty about that. I said, man, God, that can't be right because, doing it on one coin toss? No, I got to know it's you. One little heads and tails, and I'm not sure. So I said, God, I'm going to flip this coin. If it comes up 10 times heads, I'm going to seminary. 10 times tails, I'm staying here. And it was like 6-4. You can't manipulate God. You know what God says? Trust in me. Have faith in me with all your heart. Hey, look, don't lean into your own understanding. In all your ways, even Burger King ways, in all your ways, acknowledge him. He'll direct your paths. You are not going to manipulate God. He's got a plan for your life. There's no doubt. You just got to get in the game, believe him, and walk accordingly to what he says. So Gideon did that. Let me just say, I think it's in Acts chapter 1 where they cast the lot to find out who would replace Judas Iscariot, for the disciples. You may not remember that. You can read Acts chapter 1. They cast the lot. Well, who would it be? It ended up being Matthias. But anyway, that's how they made their decision. Acts chapter 2, the Holy Spirit comes, indwells believers like he indwells us now. Do you know after that event, there's not one time of the church casting lots ever. We don't manipulate God, all right? We follow his ways, we have his word, and we follow him. There's one other thing that I had to do, though, and that was to get rid of my idols. That's what God said to Gideon. It says in verse 25, that night the Lord said to Gideon, take the second bull from your father's herd, the one that is 7 years old, pull down your father's altar to Baal, pull it down, cut down the Asherah pole standing beside it, then build an altar to the Lord your God here on this hilltop sanctuary, laying the stones carefully, sacrifice the bull as a burnt offering on the altar, using as fuel the wood of the Asherah pole you cut down. So the first thing he asked him to do before he ever went into battle was to pull down your idols. And those idols are things that we put before God, that we love more than God, or that we give more time and attention to than God. Those are our idols. I had to pull down my idols. Do you know what my greatest idol was during this time? My dream. That's what it was. The reason I was battling with God so much is because my dream was more important than God to me. I'd get angry with God. There finally came a time when God made it clear to me, and I literally prayed this prayer, and I still remember praying this prayer. God, if it gives you glory for me to be at Burger King for the rest of my life, that's what I'll do. That's when I put that on the altar. And man, I never looked back after that. So fast forward about 2 years after, 2 years after that, Steve Cloud, who was the pastor of this church before that, asked me to join the staff at Northside. Did you know that? Out of the clear blue sky. I didn't expect it. Steve, will you join the staff as a pastor at Northside? And you know what I did? I did the happy dance. I mean, I was on cloud nine again. I couldn't believe it. I was going to be in the ministry. God did that. I didn't work my way to it, but God did that. I could not believe it. Just his grace in doing that. The next day, I told my boss at Burger King, he says, I understand. You've always wanted to do that. God bless you. But the next morning, my boss called me, and he said this, because I had one more lesson to learn. He said, Steve, look, and he was crying. I've never seen him cry. 20 years I've worked for him, never seen him cry. He said, Steve, look, I'll do this. If you'll work for me 4 more years, train someone to take your place, he said, I will pay for your college education at CIU and give you the time off so you can take the classes. Well, I thought, God, I thought you were saying this, but it looks like you're saying this. Because, God, I feel a little bit afraid about going on to join church staff. I don't have any training. I don't have anything like that. So, God, I'm thinking maybe you're leading me that way. Well, I was going to Texas for a week, and I told both Steve Cloud, the pastor, and my boss, when I come back, I'll give an answer. I'm going to pray about it all week. And I was praying about it, and right in the middle of that week, I get a phone call from a restaurant manager. The restaurant manager says this, hey, Steve, I just got a letter. It tells us to shut the doors. We can no longer use the Burger King trademark. And literally I go, I would know that if that were going to happen. Obviously that's a mistake. I'll call the boss and call you right back. So I called him. This is what he told me. Steve, can you get on a plane? Can you come back to South Carolina right now? What I did in the next 6 weeks is shut every Burger King down. What God was teaching me, it's not your resources, Steve. It's me. See, I thought going to school was it because remember, what am I good at? I'm good at school. In fact, if you could make money by going to school, I'd be like a quadrillionaire, right? And I thought that would give me the reason, but God said, no. I want you to join the staff at Northside right now. By the way, can I say that was the clearest answer to prayer I have ever had? he shut down that job so quickly. But I had to put my faith in God, not resources. In this part of my life, I experienced victory. But you know when I experienced victory? Was it when I was offered the job to be on staff at Northside? Mm-mm. Was it even when God answered my prayer about whether to stay at Burger King for 4 more years or go to... No. When I experienced victory was that moment when I said, God, if it brings you more glory to be here at Burger King, I trust you. I believe you. And that's what I'll do. And that's what we have to do. That's what Gideon did. Gideon trusted God. He pulled down his idols. He trusted God instead of his resources. In verse 28, it says, that is the story of how the people of Israel defeated Midian, which never recovered. Throughout the rest of Gideon's lifetime, about 40 years, there was peace in the land. He experienced victory. Hey, look, we are, right now, you are living in enemy territory, and life will be hard sometimes, but we can experience victory. What would have saved me so much from the heartache, despair, and the roller coaster ride I was on? Simply believing God. That's what would have saved me. But I was back and forth on that. I mean, 4 times, the Bible says, the just shall live by faith. Habakkuk, Romans, Galatians, Hebrews, 4 times God repeats himself, and I got to get hit over the head with a hammer. I hope you don't. Because the truth is, our lives are we truly live when we trust God, when we believe him. When we don't trust him, when we live in this world by our own power, we are simply existing. It's not real life. We go from one fear to the next. But God wants us to have life. Jesus said, I came that you may have life and have it more abundantly. That's what he wants for you. But the just shall live by faith. When the enemy is attacking you, when the world seems like it's crashing down around you, how do you experience victory? Well, same way Gideon did. Same way Abraham did. Same way Noah did. Enoch, Abel, every one of them. Look, 1 John 5:4 says this. Listen to this. Don't forget this. For every child of God defeats this evil world, and we achieve this victory. Say it with me. Through our faith. Do you get it? So what do we take with this? Well, we all have Midianites. I know that. If you don't have one now, you'll have one before too long. And there's some faith lessons that we can learn. First of all, do this. Would you do this? See yourself as God sees you. Don't see yourself as the world sees you. Your enemies see you. As people talk down. Don't see yourself like that. See yourself as God sees you. And then also look for those little sticky notes from God. I think he does that for everybody. Ours are all different because we're all different. Our situations are all different. But be looking for those. Pull down your idols. If you have anything you put before God, get that taken care of immediately. Put your faith in God and not your resources. Until heaven, your challenges or trials will not go away. Expect them. But believe this, because it is so very true. The Lord is with you. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for that promise because, Lord, we need it so desperately. We need you with us. We need you every moment of every day. And I thank you, Lord, for this, for your goodness that continues to come after us. Lord, even when we're immature, we're wrong, we're faithless, that you still keep coming. And Lord, we need you. And God, I'm praying for everyone here this morning. Many that are going through their own Midianite scenario. And maybe they're experiencing that roller coaster that I experienced, I don't know. Oh, Lord, help them to have faith. Help them to look unto Jesus, who is the author and perfecter of our faith. Help them to draw close to you. Draw strength from you. Trust you. Believe what you say because it's true. Pull down their idols that are stifling their love for you, really. Help them to pull those down. Get rid of them. Man, they're not worth it. Give themselves completely to you. And I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, this morning we're having our invitation. I don't know how God's spoken to you. Maybe right now, this morning, right now, you're going through it. Right now, this battle, you identify with that and you're in the thick of it. And maybe this morning you need to kind of come to the altar, right? Like Gideon did, like I did so many years ago. And you just need to say, God, I lay it down. I want what you want. It's not me, it's you. And God, what brings you glory, I will walk that way. Maybe you need to do that. You need us to lay it all down. Then do that. Don't wait, man. It's not worth it to wait. Do it. Maybe you have some idols that you need to cast aside. Man, come do that. Take care of that. And finally, there's some of you here that maybe say, this whole relationship with Jesus, his presence and all of that, man, that's like a foreign concept to me. What I'd like to know is how I can have a relationship with Jesus. What I'd like to know is how I can experience his presence with me. I've never had that before. I've never felt that before. But this morning, you can do that. Man, there's nothing more that I'd like to share with you or Pastor Matt would like to share with you, but how you can know and experience the King of Kings, the one who loves you the most. But as we all stand, and everyone stand now, everyone stand, yes. I want you to do this. This is all I want you to do. It's really simple. What's the Holy Spirit calling you to do this morning? You do that as we sing.